Hi, my name is Matt Humke, and I am the Director of Enterprise Development for Solimar International, and I'll be walking you through this introduction to sustainable tourism business planning. The business planning approach that we're going to go through today is really the first of five toolkits that capture Solimar International's enterprise development approach. It's the first of the five toolkits, which is followed by operations and management, which is really focused on building the capacity of enterprises, often community-based enterprises, to manage the day-to-day operations of a small tourism enterprise, medium enterprise, which includes everything from managing money to managing staff to managing clients, and is another one of the toolkits involved. The third toolkit is focused on staff training. Solimar tends to focus on four main tourism products within the tourism industry: food services, lodging services, transportation services, and tours. So the staff training toolkit focuses on building the capacity of the individuals within a community enterprise that manage those different types of products and services. The fourth toolkit is focused on sales and marketing. We'll touch on some aspects of sales and marketing within the business planning toolkit and within this presentation, but the sales and marketing is a much more comprehensive toolkit that covers everything from marketing strategy to positioning, placement, pricing, promotional techniques such as online marketing campaigns and publicity and PR and website design, all those other web-based aspects of sales and marketing. And then the final toolkit is focused on tourism conservation models and strategies. As we'll see within this short introduction, the purpose of the businesses that Solimar supports and that is covered within this toolkit is not only to generate revenue and jobs, but to also support other philanthropic missions such as biodiversity conservation and job creation and cultural preservation. So within that fifth toolkit, we talk a lot about the models and strategies that Solimar has identified by looking at its own projects and other partner projects over the years to identify trends and opportunities to directly link the resources that sustainable tourism can generate for biodiversity conservation and poverty alleviation. Really, the mission of this entire approach, starting with business planning and continuing through these other four toolkits, is to build the capacity of communities that live in and around parks and protected areas, so they in fact can financially benefit, can be a part of the financial loop that tourism presents, particularly in developing countries and particularly in isolated parks and protected areas. The underlying goal is that you create economic opportunities that depend upon the preservation of natural resources rather than their extraction, and that by creating these opportunities, communities can become active advocates and partners in conservation efforts, and we can align interests of communities with those of the managers and conservation organizations who are working to protect the natural and cultural resources of these places. This approach has been applied through both Solimar and through a partner organization, RARE, for nearly a decade in everywhere from Africa to Latin America to the Caribbean. It has produced award-winning businesses that have been recognized by the industry, and we've estimated that has generated $5 million for local economies over this time. Okay, so as you can see here, we have the overall 9 units of the business planning toolkit. The first unit really introduces you to the structure of business plans, the audiences, the reasons for investing your time and putting it together. It also talks about some basic concepts such as social enterprise and triple bottom line approach that are unique to the business plans that we'll look at within this course. The second unit talks about some basic tools and methods for collecting containing site data that's needed to develop a business plan. The third unit gets into this is really the first unit of the actual business plan itself, the end product. So the first part of the business plan is describing the business. That covers everything from products and services to business structure, so forth. The fourth unit begins to take all of that information researched in the second unit, in the site assessment, and presents methods and ways to analyze that data, market trends, market segments, market statistics, and how to document that within your business plan. Unit 5 begins to look at the competitive landscape. Who are the competitors? What are their strengths and weaknesses? Based on that, what are the competitive advantages that your enterprise and your products possess? Unit 6 begins to touch on some of the sales and marketing aspects mentioned in the previous slide, things like market strategy, identifying keywords and images to incorporate into your marketing materials, things like pricing, placement, promotional strategies and mechanisms. Unit 7 gets into some of the operational aspects of a business plan and of a small enterprise, everything from staffing plans and training plans to risk assessment to legal considerations and financial management. Unit 8 looks at some of those sustainability aspects that are unique to the business plans that we work with sustainable tourism businesses. So again, identifying specific ways in which businesses are supporting biodiversity conservation, job growth, and really documenting the specifics and how that information is incorporated into a business plan and how the costs and resources required to implement those activities are documented as well. And then the last section is the numbers section, financial projections. One of the most critical aspects of a business plan, looking at everything from developing startup costs to tour costs, product costs and prices, to developing the revenue and expense projections in profit and loss models and cash flow statements, projecting out income and profit over 5 years in 5-year income projections, and looking at other aspects like calculating fixed costs and depreciation costs, something that is very important for any small business. And then the annex of the resource includes a number of sample business plans that Solimar has developed over the years that highlight a lot of the theory and the tools described within the 9 units, as well as some other supporting resources. Unit 1 gets into the introduction of the business plan. These are pretty straightforward aspects that are universal to most business plans. The purpose, the audience, the structure. But what is unique about the business plans that apply to sustainable tourism and the projects that we often find ourselves working with is how those businesses can support triple bottom line objectives, things like not just economic objectives, but also ecological and social objectives. We talk a little bit about the concept of social enterprise and how that business structure lends itself to the businesses that we're often documenting. In preparation for actually writing the business plan, Unit 2 introduces both a number of specific information needs that need to be pulled together in order to develop a business plan, as well as introduces a number of tools to help collect that information and a number of suggestions and insight on potential information sources to go to get that important information. This includes everything from documenting the site and the partner, something that's unique to sustainable tourism business plans and to business plans that are part of development projects. That initial section is really focused on sort of painting the picture of what is this place, what are the opportunities, but also what are the needs that exist there, whether it's conservation or economic growth or cultural preservation. And again, because we're often working with projects where there are a number of stakeholders involved, from protected areas to government partners and ministries of tourism and environment, to local conservation NGOs, to the communities themselves. We start to identify within this unit who they are and what their potential and typical role is. It gets into next how to conduct a market analysis. This is looking at things like, of course, demand, and introduces a number of specific tools that the reader can use to collect this data. Things like visitor surveys, industry interviews, and focus group questions for working with intermediaries like tour operators and travel agents to better understand and assess market demands. And then on the supply side of things, it introduces insight and tools for collecting and conducting the tourism inventory. So identifying what is the supply of tourism products and services, attractions, basic resources at a given site, whether it's natural attractions like trails and rainforests to cultural attractions, to historical sites and attractions, recreational attractions and activities, sort of the full gamut of potential attractions that we often find within the tourism field. The third unit, describing the business, includes both some aspects of business plans that you find within any business plan, whether it's tourism or some other industry or product. This includes things like an executive summary, a mission statement, a vision statement, which really sets forth goals, whether it's financial or marketing or operational for the business, as well as a description of the business itself. What is it selling? What is its structure in terms of, is it a cooperative? Is it take some other form of legal structure? Who's involved in the management team? Something that's unique, again, about sustainable tourism business plans and within this particular section is the need statement, which again is tied to what are those underlying philanthropic goals of the business other than job growth and revenue generation. Is it conservation? Is it cultural preservation? What are those needs, and how is the business intending to meet those needs? Unit 4 starts to get into, based upon all the information that was collected through that site assessment phase, how to really analyze that data and how to begin identifying and documenting trends, statistics, tendencies in local, national, and international travel circles. In particular, this also looks at within these trends, within these opportunities at a given site, and these sort of market forces that are at play. What are the specific target market segments that appeal to you and your products? Like this gentleman here with the tourist shirt, who is proudly representing probably the backpacker market segment. But within those various market segments, whether it's baby boomers, young professionals, or backpackers like this guy, essentially, what are the trends that we can point to that begin to sort of build a compelling story that lend themselves to our financial projections and our proposed products that overall really support the underlying business concept that we're proposing. Unit 5 turns the attention to the competitive landscape and begins to explore ways to identify who is the competition, what are their products, and what are their strengths and weaknesses. All of those elements that we need to consider in our own enterprise and product design. It also introduces the Porter's 5 Forces methodology, which beyond competitive forces looks at a number of other factors that impact our ability to develop and deliver our products, everything from barriers and opportunities for new entrants, who our suppliers are, and what is their power and how does that affect our profitability, who are our buyers, and again, what are their strengths, how does that affect what we offer and how we offer it, as well as things like two products, all of which really help to give us a more complete perspective of the competitive landscape. And then finally, based on all this information, how do we begin to look at our own products and our own enterprise and begin to identify specific competitive advantages that we hold? And knowing those competitive advantages, how do we then use them to begin to influence where we focus our efforts in terms of product development, marketing, operations, and so forth. Unit 6 gets into the fun stuff with sales and marketing strategies. Because we've already focused on the product itself, this unit really focuses on the remaining 3 Ps of the 4 Ps, which includes placement or distribution, which is essentially how are we, what sales channels and distribution channels are we utilizing to link our products to target markets. So we talk a little bit about tourism supply chain, who are involved, intermediaries such as international wholesalers to domestic inbound operators to local travel agents and operators. And within this chapter, within this unit, we talk a little bit about the advantages and disadvantages of both direct sales scenarios in which the tourism enterprise is selling directly to the end client, as well as indirect sales scenarios in which a tourism enterprise is working with those partners, and what are the unique needs and considerations that we need to take into account when we do have indirect sales scenarios and sales partners. We talk about price in very basic terms, how to calculate pricing based on costs, how to calculate additional layers such as profit margins and commissions, and then finally promotion. Again, the main content of the sales and marketing toolkit is found in a separate toolkit, but within this unit we do start to look at some of the key elements of promotional materials and mechanisms. Things like marketing strategy, website design, online marketing, social media strategies, and public relations and PR. Unit 7 looks at, again, the nuts and bolts of operational planning. This covers everything from what is our staffing strategy, who is needed within the enterprise to operate and to manage the products that we're proposing. What training do we need to consider and to plan for and to budget for based on those staff and their roles and responsibilities. This unit looks at things like the financial management of the enterprise, basic language that sort of explains how money is managed within the enterprise without getting into too much detail, but presents a clear and reliable system for managing money within the enterprise. It looks at risk assessment and presents a number of potential risk scenarios that are unique to tourism enterprises, and as well as presents a number of mitigation plans to address those scenarios, something that most investors are interested in and consider when thinking about investing in an enterprise and a business plan. This unit includes legal considerations, things like insurance, business registration, things that any business needs to consider and to document within its business plan. And then finally, a very straightforward section on key milestones, which is essentially a section that helps the business plan architect identify and document the overall steps to establishing the business, from investment to product and infrastructure development to marketing to operations, all those critical activities that lead up to an enterprise launch. Unit 8 covers a section that is probably not found in most business plans, and something that is unique to at least the business planning approach that Solimar takes with its sustainable tourism enterprises and projects, and that covers the sustainability aspect of the business plan. Essentially, how is the business going to mitigate, first and foremost, its impacts to the environment and to the cultural resources that it is working with and depends upon, But even more proactively, how does the business and the resources it's generating, specifically time and money, how is it directly supporting sustainability activities? And again, these can fall within themes like biodiversity conservation activities, cultural preservation activities, community development activities, and interests. So without getting in too much the theory of it, this section really focuses on, with those strategies in mind, how do you document that within your business plan, and how do you use the business plan to identify the financial and the human resources that are needed to implement those sustainability activities, something that is in turn translates to the financial projection section as well, which is specifically developing a budget that covers the costs and the resources required to implement those sustainability activities. And finally, Unit 9, the section that makes some people groan, but makes me very excited, is the financial projections unit. This again, along with the products themselves and often the marketing strategy, this is the section that most investors turn to with the most interest. This is really where you as the business plan developer need to put your money where your mouth is, literally. So this section includes things like identifying and documenting startup costs for an enterprise. Something that is very important for development projects and for community-based tourism enterprises, identifying things like fixed assets, which includes everything from infrastructure such as lodging and dining facilities to equipment like boats and motors, and how to consider the very real depreciation costs that are part of upkeeping and maintaining those types of fixed assets. This includes a section or a spreadsheet on developing tour costs and pricing, which I think is very helpful, and again is quite unique for tourism products and services. The profit and loss model is really where all of the numbers come together, and the profit and loss model projects both profit in terms of the revenue of the products and services that you're selling, as well as the loss, things like direct costs of operating the products, as well as the indirect costs or administrative costs of managing a small business. The cash flow statement looks at exactly that, what's left in the bank account and the balance at the end of each month, something again for many small businesses is very important to consider. And finally, projecting out profit and revenue and expense projections over 5 years to begin to look at where the overall trends of the enterprise's profitability is headed. The annex of the business planning toolkit includes a couple of business plans that are actually referenced throughout the units themselves, but includes that information in its entirety at the end. So the participants have a chance to actually look at a completed version of a business plan, one that includes both a small community tourism enterprise called Loma Isabel in the Dominican Republic, as well as a larger network of multiple tourism enterprises that is more of a sales and marketing network and represents a slightly different version of a tourism enterprise concept. There's also some additional resources that are related to the sections within the units, including samples of infrastructure designs, things like lodging, dining facilities, and so forth, as well as a list of number of best practices in tourism that might come in handy when considering the sustainability activity specifically. So thank you very much. I hope this has been helpful, and I look forward to your participation in the actual course. Have a great day. Thank you.